Hi guys, welcome to the Corona specific series by LDFS. I'm Dr. Lakshmy. In my last two videos, we have discussed about what is an emergency fund and what are the pros and cons of having an emergency fund. Why do we need it? We have discussed everything about it. If you have not watched that video, the link is there in the description below. You can click that and watch it again before watching this so that you will understand this video better. This pandemic has taught us the importance of emergency fund. But just having an emergency fund and not having enough money in it is also problematic. Like many of the dentists have complained to us that they had planned the emergency fund, they have kept some money aside for the emergency, but the money which they kept aside was not enough to cover their expenses during this pandemic. So what is the exact amount of money which you should have in your emergency fund? Today we are going to discuss about that, like how much should be the size, how many months should we plan, and everything about it. But before going into details about it, kindly like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to share it with your juniors who are just starting the clinic or who have just started the clinic, because they will benefit the maximum from such videos. Thank you so much in advance for sharing it with your friends. Coming back to today's topic, where we are discussing about how much should we keep aside in the emergency fund. There are a lot of factors which contributes to deciding this thing, that deciding the amount which we should keep aside. And there is no one rule fits all scenario. So you have to choose what scenario you are in, which factors affects you more, and then accordingly plan the emergency fund. So let's go ahead and discuss those factors. First factor is what is the operational cost of your clinic. Now what do I mean by this is, imagine on one month no patients are coming. And when I mean no patients, 0 patients are coming to your clinic, that means no income is there in your clinic. Usually no income, other than if you have some consulting and all, that's different, but I'm just talking about the clinic income. So no clinic income is there, but we have to run that clinic, we have to keep it operational, we have to open the clinic, we have to give salary, everything. So there is some cost which is the operational cost to run the clinic without even having any income. Then also we have to run the clinic, we can't close down the clinic. So that includes all the expenses like rent, your employee salary, electricity bill, internet bill, software bill, water bill, anything. So those bills and those cost is the operational cost. So the cost to run the clinic without even having any income, then also that you have to keep the clinic operational, that is known as operational cost. Now this operational cost is easy to calculate if you have an expense tracker or you are tracking the expenses in some way. In my earlier videos we have discussed about how to create an expense tracker, and we have also given it for free. You can check out that video over here. And when you have these kind of tracking system in your clinic where you track each and every expenses that is happening, it's easy for you to calculate what will be the operational cost of your clinic. Kindly comment below and let us know if you have started using the expense tracker, or what kind of system do you use in your clinic to track your expenses. We would love to know your feedback. Second factor is, are you the sole proprietor of your clinic? That means, is your clinic in partnership with somebody, or are you the sole owner of their clinic? Because then the responsibility, the profits, the losses, everything is shared. If it's in partnership, you have to discuss with your partner all the details about the finances, how much, what stage he or she in, and what is your scenario, how much can you guys support if some emergency comes, and so that means how much to keep aside, how much money to keep aside, everything. So it depends upon, if you are in partnership, discuss it with your partner and decide on the emergency fund. Is there something extra he wants to add on the cost? Maybe he needs more money and he needs that steady income from the clinic for some time. He may not survive, like he will need that for his personal expenses, something like that. So it's always better to have a discussion with your partner and deciding on the amount which will be necessary for the clinic. And if some emergency comes, how will you guys arrange for the money? Everything. So have a chat with your partner if you are not the sole proprietor of your clinic. So that is the second factor. Third factor is, what is your personal positioning? Now, what do I mean by that is, are you single? Are you married? Do you have some amount which you have to keep aside for your personal expenses? Like, I'll give you an example. Imagine you are single and you're staying with your parents, and maybe you don't have to pay the rent and all those things. Then you don't have an add-on expenses. If you don't get any money from the clinic for 5-6 months, then also it's okay. Your survival is not at stake. So that is something which you need to consider. Maybe if you are single but you are staying in a rented place and you need to pay the rent, you need to pay the EMIs of your student loan or something, then that is an expense which you will require. That means that X amount is something which we are dependent on the clinic. So that if varies from person to person. If you are a married person, you are the sole earning member of your family, then you will need money for your spouse, for your kids, their education, maybe your parents also. And also consider in this the medical expenses, medical insurance. Does your family has medical insurance? Do you have enough covered if some medical emergency happen? In this pandemic we can't predict anything. So if that happens, how much money have you kept aside? All these things matter. So basically personal positioning helps us understand how much money or how much are we dependent on the clinic. So once you calculate that, you'll get some X amount that, okay, even if the clinic is not working, I need to get this X amount every month so that I will be able to support my family. So that X amount should be added to your emergency fund, because usually we think about emergency fund as only the clinic's money, or to run the clinic we need that much money. But it's not only that. We need to understand how much are we dependent personally on the clinic. So the X amount, or this personal positioning amount, helps us understand how much are we dependent and how much money do we need to take home every month. Add that money to your emergency fund so that you will survive that emergency period or the difficult time easily. So that is the third point. So till now we discussed about how much are we dependent on the clinic, how much is the clinic dependent on us. Like 3 factors which we discussed. First was the operational cost, then was, are you the sole proprietor, and then third point was the personal positioning of yours. How much are you dependent on the clinic? Now let's move ahead with the fourth point. That is, keep some buffer amount for unexpected expenditure. Now what do I mean by this is, imagine lockdown happened and you have kept aside money to run the operational cost and also your take home salary something. So now some compressor problem happened, or maybe some chair problem happened, or AC problem happened, plumbing problem, anything random. So something happened because of which you have to take care of that problem right now so that you will be able to run the clinic. We can't run the clinic without a chair. We can't run the clinic without a compressor or maybe something like that. So we don't know how much to keep aside for that money, but just a random money, just have some rough idea about some unexpected expenditure which can come, and keep that buffer money aside and add that buffer money in your emergency fund so that you are not cut to cut. You are not like operational cost is this much, the personal positioning is this much, so you have just added these two. But have a buffer of 10k, 20k, whichever you are comfortable with, how much ever you are comfortable with rather. So always keep some buffer amount ready with you. That is the fourth point. Fifth point is regularly check your operational cost. Operational cost may vary from month to month, or maybe not monthly you need to check, but after 6 months just check the operational cost for your clinic. Sometimes we purchase a new machine for which we are giving EMI. Sometimes we may purchase some software for which we are giving some amount every month. Something extra will come usually. So check it regularly. Have 6 monthly or quarterly, whichever you are comfortable with, but check your operational cost regularly so that you know how much money is the actual need for the clinic. And if it's varying, then accordingly change your emergency fund also. So these 5 factors which we had chat right now about is the factors which help us decide how much money we have to keep aside as monthly how much is the emergency fund for the clinic, how much is required. These 5 factors will help us decide that. So I'll just brief those 5 factors. One is what is the operational cost. Second is are you the sole proprietor. Third is what is your personal positioning. Fourth, have some buffer amount. Fifth is check your operational cost regularly. So these are the 5 factors to consider. Now the next question arises, how many months emergency fund should you keep aside? Let's discuss about that now. After considering the earlier factors, we have got now an amount, a ABC amount, which is the monthly expense for our clinic plus us and everything. Now we have to decide how many months emergency fund is enough. Usually, as per the research earlier before the pandemic, they used to say for small businesses like us, 3 to 6 months of emergency fund is enough. 3 months is the minimum and 6 months is the ideal emergency fund which you can have. That was the norm before the pandemic, but the pandemic has changed a lot of things. So now the researchers say, or rather the various business owners say, that 3 to 6 months of emergency fund is the minimum you should have for any business, and if you want to be in the ideal stage, 9 to 12 months of your emergency of your expenses should be there in your emergency fund. So ideal stage to be in is 9 to 12 months. Minimum at least 3 to 6 months is the criteria right now, which has been changed after pandemic. Now you can start with 1 month first, slowly build to 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, like that. So but have a target in mind, that this is how much, or 9 months or 12 months, whatever it is, you have a target in mind and keep that target and then work backwards and start saving your money. So that is how you determine how much to have in your emergency fund. So in my next video, we will be discussing about how can we create this emergency fund and where to keep this emergency fund. These are the things which comes to our mind next when we decide the X amount. Okay, this is the amount which I want to keep aside for the emergency fund, but how can we create it? With running the clinic and all those things, expenses, how can I create that emergency fund? And even if I create, where should I keep the emergency fund? These are the 2 questions which we are going to discuss in our next video. I hope you liked today's video. Kindly like, share and subscribe, and send us a hi on this number. We'll add you to our special broadcast list. Thank you.